Following the revelation by former military president General Ibrahim Babangida in his book, A Journey in Service, that the 1966 coup was not an Igbo coup as alleged, Igbo Apex Group, Ohanaeze Igbo, on Sunday, February 23, has demanded an apology and 10 trillion naira as compensation from President Bola Tinubu to the Igbos. Babangida, in his book, revealed that the primary objective of the coup plotters was to release Chief Obafemi Awolowo from prison and install him as Prime Minister. He emphasized that the involvement of officers from different ethnic backgrounds, including non-Igbo officers such as Major Adewale Ademoyiga, Captain Ganiyu Adeleke, and Lieutenants Fola Oyewole and Olafimihon, further invalidates the claim that it was an Igbo-driven coup. Additionally, some senior Igbo officers were also victims of the coup, such as Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Chinyelu Unegbe, who was executed by fellow officer Major Chris Anuforo. This further weakens the argument that the coup was designed to serve Igbo interests. Joining us now on the show is Senator Victor Umeh, the senator representing Anambra Central Senatorial District in the 10th Nigerian National Assembly. Good morning and welcome to the morning show, Senator Umeh.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning.
All right, let's dive straight in, Senator Umeh. I've just given a background to what was revealed in the Babangida book, and also, very importantly, the ask of Ohanaeze Igbo. When it comes to compensation, beyond the monetary compensation, what are you specifically asking for in terms of reparation, in terms of healing for the Igbo people, now that the fact that 1966 coup can no longer be termed as an Igbo coup? What are you looking for in terms of reparation and compensation?
Well, I will say that it was quite relieving that former President Babangida's book has one more time confirmed what we have always known to be the state of affairs with that coup. I have read so many books on that subject matter from the 1980s, and there were so many books on the matter already, even those written by the major participants in the coup. I have read the book by Colonel then Major Adewale Ademoyiga, which was mentioned in Babangida's book as one of the 5 majors that were the leaders of that coup, while we struck. That was his own book. There were other books written by other people who were involved in that coup. Someone like Colonel Emmanuel Bosi of blessed memory, Ben Boulier, then Aboyega himself. There was no way we would have felt better than coming from General Babangida, who was later military head of state and was an officer in the Nigerian army, though as a young officer. But having become head of state under military dispensation, it will be clear that he had access to classified information. So he was not just writing as a young military officer when the coup took place. He wrote from the point of deep knowledge from classified information in the military. So that his statement was very emphatic, and truly speaking, the coup was not an Igbo coup. It was a coup, like he posited, by young military revolutionaries who thought that they would make things better for Nigeria by removing the government at the time. And the primary objective was to release Bafemi Awolowo, who was in prison in Calabar. Even though they did not get to the point of releasing Awolowo from prison, events later showed that it was Ojukwu who released Awolowo from Calabar prison. So the coup itself was also not supported by Ojukwu himself. Having come to this realization that is should be incontrovertible at this time, what do we make of it? In terms of reparation and so on and so forth, my own is we should take advantage of this revelation and the clear statement made by General Babangida to begin the process of reconciliation and healing. The Igbos of Nigeria have been held in so much contempt with successive administrations in Nigeria, starting from Gowon, and were put on a very dark spot in the affairs of this country that to organize a coup that killed some important people in Nigeria. But truthfully and reassuringly, this book has exposed that the Igbos themselves crushed the coup. Major Obienu from Nnewi was credited to be one person who played a very pivotal role in crushing the coup. Ojukwu was a commander in Kano at the time of the coup. And I read and also I heard from him personally because, I worked with him for 5 years until his death. He was national leader of ABGA and I was national chairman of ABGA. So at various times I discussed these matters with him to get the truth of the matter. He had telephone exchange with Major Nzogwu where he declined to support the coup. Ojukwu was an Igbo man and was somebody who played a major role going forward later in history. So I would like Nigerians to bury the hatchet and shift their mind from the narrative that the Igbos organize a coup for selfish reasons. The Igbos did not ask the officers to go and organize any coup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Umeh.
So on the issue of reparation.
Yeah, he hasn't that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Answer reparation before I ask you.
Yeah, the question around reparation and what would
I should take the issue of reparation.
Like? Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Othman Danfodio said that conscience is an open wound. Only the truth can heal it. So now that it is clear that Igbos do not organize any coup to kill anybody for selfish reasons, it follows that all the things the Igbos have been denied in Nigeria by the successive governments, starting from Gowon down to the present day even, that Igbos should be seen as Nigerians with the same rights and privileges that other Nigerians will enjoy in the affairs of government. The discrimination handed down to the Igbos because of this should now abate. It should end. Let everybody come to the table with equal rights.
Okay. Couple of things. I want to ask, are you following the way, and let me just establish again for the sake of posterity, there was no Igbo coup. It was just propaganda to hang all of this on the Igbos, and we know what happened then. Even before, Babangida didn't even need to write the book. Before, we had said there was nothing called an Igbo coup. It was just propaganda. And also, the Western media that portrayed that propaganda also, is there any, letter to be written to that Western, because that Western media still exists, that pushed that propaganda big time, and we know that, number one. So, number one, are you also saying that, are you joining the likes of Igbo to talk about a 10 trillion reparation? I've heard 10 trillion, I've heard all sorts of figures. That's number one. Number two, do you think Gowon too should be able to write his own side of his story? Because he's 90 now, and he also needs to tell some side of that story. We've had conversations about Gowon saying, yes, they said in some fora, he had apologized to some people. No, we've not had a definitive book from Gowon. Do you think Gowon should tell his own side of the story? And do you subscribe to the likes of some people that are saying over 10 trillion, I think it was Anambra Indigo, and they're calling all sorts of amounts for this reparation? Those are the two questions, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, starting with Gowon, I think Gowon owes Nigerians a duty to write his own account of that war and the things that led to the war and the way the war was carried out and the way the war ended. Because when the war ended, he promised the Nigerian people reconciliation, restitution, and rehabilitation, particularly to the Igbo side of the nation. That he did not implement until he was overthrown in 1975. And these accounts that have come out, particularly from General Babangida, because these things are already available everywhere, preponderant stories told, written by the actual participants in the coup, and the counter coup, and the civil war. All these things are available. So he himself should stop playing the ostrich. He just like Babangida came out as an elder statesman at 80 now, he decided to speak the truth, including on matters of June 12. People should not return certain things unto death. Gowon was a principal person in the whole episode. He was the one that destroyed the regional arrangement in Nigeria and created the 12-state structure from where we had all these things. So he needs to come out and put his statements clearly. And because of the way he handled the war and the way he treated the Igbos, including the massacre of the Igbo people, he owes the Igbo people apology. Incidentally, he could not join these issues when people like General Ojukwu, people like him were alive. But still, his conscience requires that he must tell the truth. He must speak the truth before he leaves the stage. Yes, at 90, he cannot keep quiet and pretend over these things. A lot of books have been written, what he did and what he failed to do to ensure that that war was avoided. He was accused of so many breaches of agreement, both Aburi Accord and the rest of it. If he had kept his own side of the Aburi Accord, I believe Nigeria wouldn't have plunged into a civil war. So he didn't do these things. He needs to write a book. He needs to write a book and tell his story and apologize. Yeah.
Senator Umeh, this figure 10 trillion keeps ringing in my it keeps ringing in my head. Can you please articulate something and simplify it for me? So, what exactly are you asking for this 10 trillion for, if you are, and what do you intend to do with it? In very simple terms.
Thank you very much. I do not want to begin to talk about figures for reparation in terms of monetary compensation. I think what is important is that at this stage where we are, let's put behind those dark days in our history and go forward. They know what they denied the Igbos. A change in attitude of the present government towards reintegrating the Igbos fully into the Nigerian project and casting away that suspicion that Igbos organized a coup that made them to be removed from their scheme of things in Nigeria. If we put a stop to it, it begins the healing process. It's not something that you use money to quantify in terms of compensation. What we need is a change in attitude. Today is still mourning time in the life of Nigeria. Let them begin to build the infrastructures infrastructure in Igbo land.
In everywhere in Nigeria. Yes, Senator, I agree with you. Let's put aside that money thing because it's so clear and yet very difficult to understand in many circumstances. Let's go to another thing. I think it is clear, it is very good for us to remember that whether somebody is Fulani, Igbo, or Ijo, I want Nigerians to remember it's an accidental thing. And I believe that it is limiting for us to be defined by something that is accidental. I'd rather it be known as a carpenter, a lover, or a singer than really that accidental thing that came to us. Now, the Igbo coup expression, which you seem to say is the origin of a lot of problem that we've had since after that coup, we can call it a Nigerian coup because the people who did it were all Nigerians, ultimately. But I think if we really want to move forward the way you say we should, and say, let us cast away that black thing, it will be important not to consider the rest of Nigerians as evil and say perhaps they make a mistake. Perhaps they misunderstand. At least not those in power, the ones on the street. Those ones on the street that are calling it Igbo coup, rightly or wrongly, the reason why they call it Igbo coup, we should study it. Whether you agree with them or not, some of them say it is an Igbo coup because the people that were killed were not Igbo and the ones that were not killed were Igbo. Whether or not that was their intention, maybe they wanted to install Awolowo as head of state or prime minister. The reason why people are saying so is that the victims of the coup, not the counter coup, the victims of the coup itself were non-Igbos, while those who were their peers as Igbos did not suffer their fate. I think this is a historical thing, but I'd like you to comment on misunderstanding of history and perhaps exploitation of facts in histories for propaganda purposes. So if we want to black out, let's talk to Nigeria. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Like you had earlier said about the Western media,
yes,
how they have consistently spinned the stories as the coup being an Igbo coup. It's very unfortunate that even events in history have proven that the coup wasn't an Igbo coup, and the Western media have refused to let go. Even after Babangida's presentation of his book, upon this revelation and statement that the coup wasn't an Igbo coup, some people have started writing again from the Western media, trying to ask questions and posers to make it an Igbo coup. But the principal thing is that from the original intention of the coup plotters, the main man who was to be installed president of Nigeria, if the coup had succeeded, was eventually brought out from prison, from Calabar, by Ojukwu himself. So I think whatever people try to write and conjecture to be able to put a certain people in distrust in the minds of Nigerians should cease. Because I don't think going with that storyline, and if you look at the counter-coup itself, the Igbos have paid very huge price for the counter-coup. For the fact that the executioners of the coup, some of them failed in their assignments, will not make it a deliberate thing to be heaped on the Igbo people. There are people who can be in that assignment, and some of them can be lousy. They will not be able to implement assignments given to them. Some did it purposefully, successfully, without doing it for with any intention to make one side suffer for it more, other than to achieve their purpose, to change government and bring up Obafemi Awolowo to power. So we have to see it at that. Continuing to try to expose the Igbos to national distrust is very wrong. Major Adewale Adeboyege and Captain Adeleke and Ganiu, all of them mentioned in that book, you know where they come from. They are not Igbo people. They were in the plot and the execution of the coup. So because some of them couldn't see their own assignments through, could not be said to be a plan for a coup directed at some people against the other. There were so many things that played out along the line. There was counter-coup. Ibrahim Babangida, who was the highest military officer that assumed the authority of power at that time, the way he proceeded, he fought for the unity of Nigeria. He didn't want Nigeria to be dismembered, but he paid dearly with his own life. He was killed. And at that time, the spirit of brotherhood was very strong. Colonel Fajui, who was playing host to him as the military governor of the Western region, chose to die with him. He was killed together with General Ironsi. So all these things, particularly what politicians started doing, and some manipulators along the line, they were the people that sowed the seed of discord that has become so bitter. People want to use that to capitalize on their political interests and gains. I don't see what it should be.
Senator.
I want to who was released from prison.
Yes.
Right.
I'm coming.
Senator Umeh,
Yes, the capital of
Senator
who
Umeh
was released from prison.
Yes, just as you wrap up your
became vice
thoughts.
chairman of Military Council of Gowon.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Of course, this is a very robust conversation that must be had and cannot be finished in one session alone. So we'll definitely continue just expounding on this and just discussing it and breaking it down. But thank you for your time with us today, and hopefully have you again very soon.